In today's video, I'm taking some of the most inexpensive thrift store items I could find, ranging from 50 cents to $2.99, and transforming them into stylish spring decor. I think you'll be genuinely surprised at the beautiful pieces you can create for just a few dollars. So whether you are looking for budget-friendly home decor ideas or just love a good DIY thrift flip, today's video is packed with inspiration for you. So let's get started.
For the first project, I spent $1.99 on this metal stand, even though I have no idea what it is. So if you recognize it, please leave me a comment. Although I didn't mind the gold color, I thought a painted white finish would look better with the idea I had in mind. When the chalk paint was dry, I distressed it with fine grit sandpaper. Then I brushed on clear wax to seal the paint. Originally, I was going to attach a rabbit figurine to the top, but I changed my mind and used a bird's nest instead. I used a combination of hot glue and florist wire to hold it in place. I ran the wire through the holes in the little piece of metal at the top and then through the nest and twisted the ends tightly together. Then I hot glued a thrift store ceramic bird in the nest. My idea for this odd metal stand was to use it as a twine dispenser. So I grabbed a skein of cotton twine and transferred it to the center rod. I used my Lazy Susan so I could spin it and wrap it really fast. Before I finished, I wanted to embellish the nest with some greenery, little eggs, and Spanish moss. Then for the finishing touches, I placed the end of the twine in the bird's beak and added a small pair of scissors to the nest. I've been loving these wood signs lately. They're so cheap at my thrift store and can be used in so many ways. For this project, I'm going to decoupage the front, so I sanded over it to remove some of the lettering. Then I printed out a Woodland image on cardstock in a size just slightly larger than the wood sign. To adhere the cardstock, I applied spray adhesive to the wood, making sure to cover it completely, but without creating any pools or puddles of adhesive. Make sure your image is lined up when you press it into place, because once it's stuck, it's truly stuck. Smooth over the paper with a brayer to make sure it's completely adhered and all air bubbles are removed. Once adhered, use an X-Acto knife or utility knife to cut off the extra paper around the edges. Then go over the cut edges with sanding paper to create a smooth, natural-looking edge. Although this print is pretty cute, if you've watched my channel before, you know I'm not done. I printed out some butterfly images on cardstock and cut them out on my Cricut machine, but you could easily cut them out with scissors. I slightly folded the wings upward and placed a drop of hot glue in the center of the back and placed the butterflies in various spots on the print. Finally, I sealed the paper by brushing on a light coat of Mod Podge. It's important not to overdo it. Too much Mod Podge could cause the cardstock to wrinkle or bubble.
Guys know I am super busy running my YouTube channel and online store all by myself. And so I don't want to waste a lot of time getting ready in the morning. I need a makeup routine that I can accomplish in 5 minutes or less. So, believe it or not, I threw out all of my old makeup and replaced it with just a few key products from Merit Beauty. I was immediately impressed with Merit when my order arrived in this adorable corduroy tote bag. You know, you just might see me repurposing this bag in an upcoming video. Now I'm ready to apply the Minimalist. This is a hybrid concealer foundation. You can apply it just to the dark or red areas, or you can apply it all over if you want full coverage. This just blends in so beautifully. Next, I'm going to apply the Flush Balm. This might just be my favorite Merit product. It's a cream tint that just melts into your skin. Oh, now I don't look so pasty. Now I'm going to apply Merit's Clean Lash. The thing I like best about this mascara is that it seriously does not smudge until you take it off at night. Now I'm just going to finish off with Shade Slick. It's very moisturizing and not at all sticky. Well, there you go. I don't feel made up. I just feel like a better version of me. And right now, you can get exclusive discounts on Merit sets using the link in my description and shop the products I use. Every first order gets the signature makeup bag, and all orders over $40 ship for free.
This $3 miniature chalkboard was probably originally from Hobby Lobby. A tiny chalkboard doesn't seem very functional to me, so I'm going to remove it from the pedestal. I easily removed 3 of the 4 screws, but the last screw was stripped. However, I was able to pull the 2 pieces apart. I didn't care for the gold polka dots, so I repainted the frame with 2 coats of a mossy green chalk paint. I was planning on covering the chalkboard, so I didn't care if I got some paint on it. Once the paint was dry, I distressed the edges with sandpaper. Then I brushed on clear wax. This time I was careful to keep it off the chalkboard because wax would interfere with my ability to adhere a paper print. I printed out a vintage rabbit image on regular copy paper in a size large enough to cover the chalkboard. I used regular copy paper rather than cardstock this time because I needed to be able to press the paper along the curved edges to create an impression so I could more easily cut out the irregular shape. I also cut out a section at a time, which I felt helped to prevent the paper from tearing. To adhere it, I brushed Mod Podge over the chalkboard and on the back of the paper and carefully pressed it in place. To smooth it out, I used a plastic tool from a rub-on transfer packet because this time a brayer wouldn't be able to get into all those curved spots. A little piece of paper in one of the curves was missing and must have tore off, so I cut a sliver in the same color from one of the paper scraps and glued it in that spot, and you can barely even tell. Then I brushed on a top coat of Mod Podge to seal the paper. I purposely chose an image with rabbits near the bottom because I wanted to add something over the top half. I had recently thrifted a package of 8 miniature wreaths for just $2. To dress up one of the wreaths, I first added some small sprigs of greenery, just sticking them in between the vines. Then I hot glued a small bird nest along the bottom and added 2 small eggs. To make it look more rustic, I stuck a few small sticks into the bottom center of the wreath so they stuck out on either side. Then I just rummaged through my floral scraps, adding some faux fern leaves and branches with tiny white flowers on either side of the nest, and a small bunch of white flowers next to the nest. To attach the wreath, I drilled a hole in the top center of the frame. Then I used a pointed tool to push the end of a strand of ribbon through the hole. I tied it around the wreath, created a loop for hanging, and then tied on a matching bow. I thrifted a $2 glass rabbit candle holder. It's cute as is, but I think we can take it up a notch, or maybe two. To start, I cut off the center metal rod from the chalkboard pedestal, and then I painted it with white chalk paint to cover up those gold polka dots. When the paint was dry, I distressed the wood with sandpaper. Then, to attach the candle stand to the pedestal, I applied Gorilla Glue clear gel around the top of the pedestal and slid on the glass rabbit, which had a hole on the underside. Rather than putting a taper candle in the rabbit, I stuffed the candle hole with styrofoam. Then, once again, I rummaged through my floral scraps and began adding some yellow and white flowers and some faux greenery to the styrofoam. Once all the flowers were added, I covered the styrofoam with hot glue to help hold all of those stems in place. For ribbon, I decided to use some yellow raffia, tearing each strip into 2 or 3 smaller strips. I tied them around the pedestal and then hot glued a flower in the center. For some extra texture, I created a little bunch of raffia and hot glued it to the styrofoam next to the flowers. Chances are you already have a ceramic rabbit very similar to this thrift store find. So let's make it more interesting and unique. First, I'm going to add a floral rub-on transfer to the side of the rabbit. Due to the slick curved surface, it was difficult to get it to adhere. I had hoped for a perfect transfer, but I ended up with some cracks and a few tiny missing pieces. So I lightly rubbed over it with a sanding block to give it a distressed look and to disguise the flaws. It actually ended up looking better than I expected. I tried a few different containers to place under the rabbit's paws, and a small terracotta pot seemed the perfect height. I filled the pot with some recycled styrofoam and added some small white roses from my stash. Then I covered the styrofoam with fluffy moss. For an extra little touch, I took a Dollar Tree butterfly sticker, trimmed off the excess transparency around the edges, and hot glued it to the rabbit's nose. I told you that I've been loving these word signs. For this project, I'm going to flip it over and use the back side as the front. I usually use Goo Gone to remove stickers, but I didn't want to get the wood greasy since I was planning on decoupaging it. So I used my heat gun to heat up the adhesive and scraped them off as best I could. I printed out a vintage bird nest image on regular copy paper to fit inside the box. To adhere it, I brushed a Mod Podge to the wood and to the back of the paper, carefully pressing it into place. Then I used the plastic rub-on transfer tool to smooth it out, removing any wrinkles or air bubbles. Finally, I brushed on a light top coat of Mod Podge to seal the paper. While the Mod Podge was drying, I grabbed a bird figurine sent to me by a sweet viewer. There was a small damaged spot on the center bird's head, so to disguise it, I brushed gold rub and buff over that spot and then over all 3 birds. I thought the additional gold made them look even better. To attach the birds to the sign, I used a combination of Gorilla Glue clear gel and hot glue along the bottom and pressed the figurine to the inside bottom of the frame. Then I wanted to add some faux greenery and florals on either side of the bird figurine that would mimic the decoupaged image on the box, which included fern stems, blue flowers, and red berries. I also glued some moss to the figurine directly under the birds. The berries were pretty faded, so to brighten them up, I dabbed a little red chalk paint on them. This could be used as a shelf sitter, but I added a sawtooth hanger on the back so it could be hung on a wall too. To finish off the back, I lightly sanded over the words and then brushed on a coat of black chalk paint to cover the lettering. Next, let's see if we can turn a 50-cent miniature watering can into cute Easter decor. First, I trimmed a little off the top and bottom of an IOD rub-on transfer so it would fit on the side of the can. It adhered easily and perfectly, but I still distressed it with a sanding block to give it an aged appearance. I filled the inside of the can with recycled packing styrofoam. Then I printed out a vintage Easter bunny image. I flipped it horizontally and printed out a second image in exactly the same size. That way I could glue them together to create a 2-sided paper bunny. I used a good quality glue stick to adhere the 2 sides together. To place the paper bunny in the can, I cut a slit in the styrofoam and slid the paper into the slit and added hot glue on both sides to hold it in place. I used Excelsior to cover the bare styrofoam. Sometimes I cut slits and stuck a tuft of Excelsior in, and sometimes I just glued the Excelsior to the surface of the styrofoam. I also added a few colored eggs and some tiny pink flowers cut from Dollar Tree greenery. The delicate greenery that I added to the can is an old Hobby Lobby garland that I cut into small pieces. Finally, I just added a bow to finish it off. This metal butterfly was probably intended for outdoor use, but with a few tweaks, I think we can turn it into pretty spring decor. I didn't care for the dark orange color, so to create a neutral base, I painted it with 2 coats of white chalk paint. I love the look of aged, chippy metal, so when the paint was dry, I distressed it with 220 grit sandpaper. Once again, I pulled out my floral scraps, particularly any pink ones I could find, and began creating a small arrangement. Once I had a grouping I liked, I twisted a strand of florist wire around the stems. Then I added a few floral stems pointing in the opposite direction. Even if the florist wire is snug, I can usually squeeze in a few more stems. To attach the flowers to the butterfly, I took another strand of wire, wrapped it around the bouquet and directly over the other wire, and ran it to the back of the butterfly and tightly twisted it in place. To conceal the wire, I tied a ribbon directly over it, using a little hot glue to make sure it didn't slide around. Once the flowers were attached, you could barely see the butterfly's antenna, so I decided to replace them. They easily popped off. I took a strand of heavy wire, ran it halfway through the hole for hanging it on a wall, and twisted it a few times. I also used a drop of hot glue to help secure it in place. Then I just used a pair of needle nose pliers to curl the ends of the wires a bit. I hope this video gave you some great ideas for creating spring decor for your home. And let me know which project was your favorite. I love hearing from you. And if you're looking for more spring inspiration, here's a video you may enjoy. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next week.